I muted us, which would be this. But I leave it on because you never know if they're asking questions or they're in whatever. But right now, Jim has himself muted, Peter has himself muted. And now Sandy's on. No, not yet, right here.
Rita, I'm just going to put you on mute, okay?
Sure.
Rita, I could still hear you even though you were on mute.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Dave. Hello, Jim, Sandra, Louis.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello. Thanks, Lois. I'm going to be promoting Earl and Jaspreet into the panelists. So just keep your video off until you present. And just so council knows, they're part of the Center Square presentation. They're part of the Pannoni team.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Good evening. Let's see, we have Peter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 council members here. And I see PennDOT, Pannoni Construction Pannoni Engineering is available. So it is 6 o'clock and we're going to start this city council meeting. First with the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. For this invocation, you can remain seated and stand for the pledge of the flag. As we meet here this evening, we ask for your guidance to help us through our difficult times. Give us the wisdom to make the right decisions for our residents. As we look at Center Square, let us always remember the 11th commandment. Thou shalt not touch the Center Square. However, we will be doing that tonight, and hopefully we have people who will be giving us some good input. Tonight, we also take time to remember 2 individuals that have passed from this life. Josie Small was a member of this council and served as its president. We thank her for her service to our residents. We also remember John Moses Robinson for his dedication and love of this community and its residents. He was a true practitioner of humanity who helped all, regardless of race, color, or ethnic group. May we have a moment of silence for these 2 individuals, please. Thank you. Pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Flag
And to the republic
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
nation,
with liberty and justice
indivisible,
for all.
with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk. By the way, we have our former city clerk now retired, Tom Hess, is with us this evening. He'll be doesn't need any practice, but he's taking over for Rita, who will be leaving us on Monday. She's actually on Friday. She has a personal day she's taking on Friday as well. Roll call, Mr. Clerk. He's muted. Bottom left-hand corner, Tom. There you go. You're all right now.
Okay. Mr. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Ettinger,
Here.
Mr. Milan,
Here.
Mr. O'Connell, Mr.
Here.
O'Connell, Dr. Ruggles,
Here.
Mrs. Volcano,
Here.
Mayor Panto.
Here. Approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Brown and seconded by Dr. Ruggles. Any additions, deletions to the agenda? Roll call.
Mr. Ettinger,
Aye.
Mr. Milan,
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
Mayor Panto,
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Louis, are you hearing me better with this microphone? Okay, thank you. Action on the minutes of our October 14th meeting.
Move to approve.
Moved by Ruggles,
Second.
second by O'Connell. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Roll call, please.
Mr. Milan,
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
Mayor Panto,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger.
Aye.
And at this time on our agenda, we have our presentation by Pannoni Associates for the Center Square traffic pattern presentation. Hello, Earl. How you doing?
Doing well, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Earl. We'll turn it over to you.
Mayor, do you want Dave to do the intro? If you
That'd be
don't mind?
great.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, and hopefully we're not violating any commandments as we approach this this project. But thanks for bringing that up.
Well, you know, I don't like to touch the circle. Mayor Ashton did, and he never forgot it.
Well, rest assured, we've been handling it with a lot of care, and we want the final product to be something that everybody is proud of.
Yes, I'm making a square.
Well, we'll try. Just to give some setting and context for those that may not be as familiar, the circle was redone about 40 years ago, and you know it's showing its age right now, and you know we're getting concerned over uneven walking surfaces. We don't have compliant ADA ramps. It just needs to be improved, and so. Actually, it's amazing to think about it, but our first pitch to PennDOT for funding for this was back in 2009. And at that time, there was a call from the business community to consider two-way roads around the Ring Road, which is 2nd, Spring Garden, 4th, and Ferry, and also to consider improvements to the Center Square Road, which we've been through various versions and iterations over the past 11 years. You know, at that point, we really started to scrap together sources of funding aside from PennDOT, because the one thing that's really important to understand about this project is it is relatively complicated. There are 3 components here. There's the Ring Road itself and how we deal with traffic on a, conversion from a one-way to a two-way basis. There's the Center Square roadway and whether it deserves a road diet and whether within the context of that road diet, are we able to expand our Center Square Park to take up more real estate and give us, more passive recreation, which has really been a cry from the public and, users like the farmers market and special events who are really cramped into Center Square. So all of those are considerations that we've undertaken with our design consultants, Pannoni, who've been great to work with. I would like to say that, this isn't a, Pannoni, pitching things to the city. This is really a public stakeholder run process. And I believe the engineers from Pannoni have reacted to what they've heard. And I think what you'll see tonight is a product of the first meeting that we had back in October of 2019, which was really well attended. We got a lot of great feedback. And since that point, we've met with just about every stakeholder we can think of that is a user of the circle and invested in its, in its improvement. So like I said earlier, we have taken and plan to take a lot of care in this to make sure that the final product is really a great thing for balancing intermodal transportation and transportation equity. We don't want to, make it a bottleneck for motorists, but we also really want to be accommodating to the pedestrians that use it. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Earl Armitage from Pannoni to talk about the traffic portions of the project.
Thank you, Dave. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. So if everybody can see that, let me know.
We're good.
Wonderful. Okay, so thank you both for the introduction. As Dave mentioned, this is kind of a 3-part presentation. The first 2 parts are funded through PennDOT, and the last portion of it is funded through park funding. And for the 3rd part regarding the park, I will turn it over to Jaspreet from our office to go through those slides. So as Dave mentioned, we were in front of council and actually had an in-person meeting, which was nice, back in December of 2019. And we went through a presentation, and at that point, we were in the very early stages of the alternatives analysis. Where we are today is basically completing our preliminary engineering, which is basically how PennDOT breaks projects up. There's preliminary engineering, and then there's final design. And we're transitioning in between those 2 now. So it just seemed like a great time to come out, present where we are, as Dave mentioned, give an update, and show everybody where we're at. So everybody knows the project location of where we are. We are in the basically the downtown heart of Easton here. The roadways that we're looking to convert from one-way to two-way, as Dave mentioned, are Ferry Street, 2nd Street, and Spring Garden. They're all currently one-way streets in a counterclockwise motion. 4th Street was previously a one-way street, as everybody knows, and has been converted to a two-way. This slide just shows everybody the traffic volumes. These are average daily traffic volumes. So in a given day, pre-COVID, these are the volumes of cars that travel down each of the roadways. And we actually had updated traffic count data since 4th Street had been converted to a two-way. So you can see heading southbound, there's about 3,400 cars. Heading northbound, there's already about 2,000 cars, which we found to be a great thing, because if you look over at 2nd Street, which is still a one-way street, we have about the same number of vehicles heading northbound there. So people are absolutely using the conversion. Some of the project goals is to improve wayfinding, and Dave and the mayor touched on this. We want to improve access, getting to businesses, getting to people's homes. Right now, with the one-way restriction, people have to obviously go in that direction to get to and from their destination. One of the items that has been found when people convert one-way streets to two-way streets is it actually helps with vehicle speeds. If you have a wide roadway, such as this, that at one point was a two-way road, people feel comfortable driving at a higher speed. So by converting it to two-way, it makes the lanes narrower. It does affect vehicle speeds, which is something we certainly want to slow down. As I mentioned before, this is the 4th Street pilot project, very successful project. You can see the photo at the top before it was converted, and then the photo at the bottom right is once it was converted to the two-way flow. This, believe it or not, was done all the way back in 2015, although it seems like about a year ago. We did signal modifications. We had to modify the traffic signals because obviously we had traffic traveling in both directions, such as Northampton. We had to adjust the parking. We went with a 7-foot parking space, which seems to be working really well through there. And then we did add the bike sharrows, which you can see in the bottom right, the pavement markings for bicyclists. The cross section of all 4 roadways is 36 feet curb to curb. So we divided that up, as I mentioned, into 7-foot wide parking aisles, and we maintained 11-foot travel lanes with that. This slide just shows the existing conditions, shows where the traffic signals are and where the stop controls are. And the next slide will show once we introduce the two-way traffic. And one item I do want to point out is the intersection of Ferry and 2nd Street is a little unique. It is a curve through there, but there are other driveways. So we're going to look at putting an all-way stop at that intersection, which means you would stop on each of the approaches, which is common throughout the city at a lot of the heavier traveled intersections. The intersection of Spring Garden Street and 2nd Street is currently signalized. And as Dave mentioned, we really do take feedback seriously. And one of the comments that we did receive at the public meeting, I believe it was from a resident that lives nearby, felt that this intersection of 2nd and Spring Garden would work better without a traffic signal. So we're looking at removing the traffic signal and installing a always stop condition at that intersection. In order to do that, we had to look at the traffic volumes, and the volumes will support that change. The other 5 traffic signals will be modified, similar to what we did on 4th Street, to accommodate two-way travel. So this is a summary of everything I just ran through real quick on the Ring Road. We do need to adjust the signals. We need to adjust the timings. We need to modify primarily a lot of pavement markings and a lot of signage through those areas, and adjust parking meters as well through there. Before I move on to Center Square, a lot of the feedback we got from the community from our public meeting was very positive about converting from the one-way to two-way. And Dave and I do talk often from different feedback that he receives, and it seems like that is really supported to make those changes. And that leads me right into Center Square.
Earl,
Yes.
Earl, before you get into Center Square, I just want to add that I think the city and any number of its departments has been fundraising for this project for the past 10 years. And I think everyone's done a great job. We've, just PennDOT alone, we got 2.2 million. We have about 900,000 for the park. But, we're going to see things that we aspire to in our design, but we may not be able to, when it comes time to bid this out, accomplish everything. So we may have to value engineer this at some point, but what you'll see is what we hope to accomplish.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that, Dave. Jumping into Center Square. So obviously this is the intersection of Northampton and 3rd, historic. We'll talk about the farmers market. There is parking within the square, which we will touch on as well. And we do have obviously a very successful park in the center. I'm not going to read all the information on this slide, but it goes through basically what my presentation is going to walk through, just general information. On the circle itself, it is 2 travel lanes heading through. They're extremely wide lanes for anyone that has driven it or tried to cross. We have 20-foot lanes to travel around. And as you saw on the previous slides, average travel lanes are anywhere from 11 to 12 feet wide. I'll talk about the operation. I think it shows better on future slides than trying to read through here. And then just real quick under traffic, you can see the volume of pedestrians that are out there. It's very well used for pedestrian traffic. And a lot of the feedback that we received was to not focus just on vehicles, but to think about pedestrians and focus the design on pedestrians. So with that, I'll jump into the operation. I would assume everybody knows this, but the inner lane of the circle continues around the circle. The outer lane is an exit lane. So if you move to the outer lane, there are cones and channelizing devices in place to help the motorist realize that they are now going to leave the circle. It's certainly an unconventional traffic signal operation, as we all know as well, and as PennDOT reminds me every time we talk about the project. So let's get into that operation. So the signal operation, which we show here, is there is a flashing red for motorists that are entering the circle from any of the side streets. That means that you will essentially stop and then proceed into the circle when you have an opening. If you're within the circle, you have flashing yellow, which is to proceed with caution around. So this actually operates consistent with a lot of modern roundabouts that you're seeing, not the circles that exist in New Jersey that are being ripped out, but the modern roundabouts that are being put in. You yield when you enter. The next phase of the traffic signal is for pedestrians, and it's exclusive pedestrian phase. And what that means is you do not cross the intersection or cross into the park when vehicles are moving. Every approach to the signal is red, and a pedestrian gets a walk symbol to go either into the center or to cross any of the side streets. And I have a note here that this is a recall mode. And what that means is the pedestrians do not need to activate this. There's no push buttons that you need to hit in order to get a phase to come up for the pedestrians to cross. It makes it very efficient for pedestrians. They don't have to find where the push button is. They just wait. When the signal cycles through, it'll give them that walk symbol to get across. Farmers market, extremely successful. Here's just one of the photos there. We did do traffic counts during that, just to get more information about how this operates. As you can see here, it is closed down to a single lane, similar to how it's operating right now, I believe. So there is a center lane is closed, and that's where the tents go and people set up with their vans and their trucks at that time. And then one of the lanes coming into the approach is closed during that time as well. David mentioned this, the circle has not been touched for a long time. There is a need to upgrade the accommodations, especially for ADA. We need to put in modern accommodations that meet everybody's needs, which is part of this project. Pavement is in poor condition. You can see here there's a lot of utility cuts, a lot of repairs that have been done over the years just to keep everything smooth and flat. So we really need to improve this. And one of the items we're looking at doing is taking out the entire crosswalks that are here with this depressed curbing. This is a concrete curb. It does expand and contract separate from the asphalt paving, always creates joint issues. So we're looking to do a stamped asphalt crosswalk. It's extremely decorative, looks very nice, and it lasts a long time. We have photos of these crosswalks installed, and we take a photo every year for many, many years, and they last a long time. So that's what we're looking to put in with this project. It lasts almost basically as long as the asphalt will last. Drainage, right now we only have one inlet along the center island, and this isn't very glamorous drainage, but it's something we want to look at and accommodate. So we want to make sure that we don't have ponding issues, and that with the work that we're doing, we can get the water off of the street as quickly as we can. So we mentioned this, we did develop a lot of alternatives. Some of them were very innovative. We looked at closing down certain streets, looked at closing down certain approaches to the circle, pretty much everything. We really wanted to take a full look at any alternative that could be implemented at the circle. We got input from city staff, we got input from PennDOT. We developed all those alternatives at different levels based on the feedback we got. Some of them we could just throw out very early. Other ones we wanted to further analyze them to see how they would work. We had our public meeting in December, very well attended. People filled out information cards. All of that was included in what we call an alternatives analysis report that was submitted to PennDOT. I did have a conversation with PennDOT, which I'll talk about later. Going through what alternatives they liked and kind of where we're coming out of that alternatives analysis phase. We updated some of the information on the web page this summer. For anyone that went on the web page, you could find new updates on where the project stood. And we essentially selected a preferred alternative to move forward with in September, just last month. So I'm going to get into that now. This is just the existing conditions of what we're talking about today. And what you're all excited to see is the preferred alternative. So this is a rendering of the preferred alternative. It is a single lane movement through here. So the approaches would be a single lane, and the circulating movement through here would be a single lane instead of the two here. A lot of what we've seen through our observations, through our modeling, through talking to different people, is that the lanes are not utilized well. People get confused. They don't know which lane to be in. There's a lot of people trying to change lanes within the circle. So we feel that this would really simplify the traffic flow. And with converting all the one-way streets around here to two-way streets, there's a lot of alternatives for people in different ways they want to go if they're in a car to get to and from their destination. The primary goal of this project, and a lot of what we heard from feedback, was let's accommodate pedestrians, let's improve that experience for the park and for the destinations in downtown. So that's what this project does. It bumps out the curbs on each of the corners, and it also expands the size of the park 20 feet. So what we're showing here is basically it's a 20-foot extension of the park. It would be what we call mountable, so that when the farmers market returns to the square, they would be able to get vehicles directly up onto that apron. If there's an emergency need for fire trucks, which we talked about last meeting, they would be able to drive up onto this, but it's about a 4-inch elevated concrete area. What this does is it significantly shortens the pedestrian crossing time that we need, so we can give more green time to the vehicles. But it also makes it a lot easier for pedestrian. Instead of crossing 40 to 50 feet, now you're crossing 20 feet to get into the circle. It's just a much shorter crossing through there. We're working with PennDOT on the operation of the signal. The way we have it now is to maintain the operation the way that it is. We looked at a whole different variety of ways of coordinating the traffic signals. And through that exercise, we came to the conclusion that this signal operates the way it does because that's the most efficient way for it to operate. We looked at green, yellow, red traffic signals, which is what PennDOT wants us to look at implementing here. The problem we run into that is there's very short distance between these intersections. So as soon as you turn any of them red, the traffic backs up into the other intersection. So we looked at alternating the phases of the signal, meaning we let people come in on Northampton eastbound, and then we stop people, and then we let them come in on 3rd Street, and we stop people. Any way we modeled it, we had issues with the operation. not to spend too much time on that, but one of the items that PennDOT mentioned to us, and this was just last week, was there's a new signal operation that they're considering implementing at an intersection in the city of Bethlehem, and it'll be the first one as a pilot project. And what it's called is a flashing yellow arrow. So what we would look at doing is basically maintaining the operation the way it is today, but if you're in the circle, you would be given a green light. And if you're entering from any of the side streets, you would have a flashing yellow arrow. So it'd be very similar to what we have. Then the signals would go yellow, red, like they do today, and the pedestrians would have their pedestrian crossing phase.
Earl?
Yes.
Earl, if I can interrupt you a second. I have a problem with the existing flashing yellow and red and then going to all red. Motorists don't know what it is. I realize that they should know. It's in the motor vehicle handbook since I was a kid, but they don't know. And what happens is they come up to a flashing yellow and they don't know what it means. They go up to a flashing red, they stop, and then they just go through the red light. What will be done to stop them from going through if we're trying to make this more pedestrian friendly? Literally, when you're walking in there, you have to wait at least 10 seconds before you start crossing, or you're gonna get hit by a car, because they don't stop until they want to get off of the rotary. What is being done with the mast that will stop the people? They'll know they have a red light before they get to the crosswalk.
Okay, no, that's a great question. So we're going to put in new traffic signals. So the mast arms are going to be all new. We have to be very careful on where we place them so that they're very visible. It's going to be easier because we're not trying to control 2 lanes of traffic. But to get to your specific point, what we want to do is the standard operation, and that's why PennDOT is proposing that new operation. So the signal, if you're in the circle, you would get a green light when you're allowed to proceed through, and it would go yellow and red, just like it would at any other intersection, and that would completely standardize that movement.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and then the side street would have a red whenever the pedestrian crosses, but instead of going to a green, it would go to a flashing yellow arrow, and that's when they would be able to enter on yield like they do today.
Okay.
Because PennDOT really wants to make this standard operation for all of the same reasons that you just mentioned.
Sounds good.
So this is just a rendering showing kind of on a scale of taking our drawings that are drawn to scale into CAD and creating that into an image file. This is showing what that would look like. So the mast arm is not going to be where it's shown in this picture, but it shows you the new curb lines bumped out, how short those crosswalks would actually be. And I know 20 feet does not sound like a lot to add to a park, but when you do that to a park with a diameter as large as this, that's a substantial amount of space that we'll have available to us. And then lastly, which one of the items we want to talk about is the parking around the square. And this goes into what Dave was saying before about the funding, which is another slide that I have that I'll get to as well. The corner that I want to focus on right now is the southwest corner. This is basically in front of Crayola's property there. And what they did is they reduced the parking and simplified it so that you don't have those areas where you pull into. Let me just go back a slide here. Oh, I went forward a slide. Okay, so this shows the existing corners that we have, and people will come into the circle, and if they want to park, they pull into an aisle that's open, park, and then they pull into an aisle that exits right at the stop bar. The Crayola side is pretty much all open. It doesn't have that concrete island in the middle with the one tree, and people can pull in and parallel park or park at the end. And what that does is it provides a lot larger area for tables, for people to gather, and instead of it just being all parking. And it also eliminates that enter-exit issue that we deal with out there. So what we're looking at doing is, if the funding allows, to kind of replicate that treatment on all 4 corners. So we'll have a lot more seating area, a lot more pedestrian area, gathering area, all around the square, not just in the circle. And we'll still have parking. It'll just be a different layout than what's out there today. Reduces the access points, reduces the points of vehicles coming in and out. And as we mentioned, that would be funding dependent. So real quick, this is just a summary of all the items I talked about of what we're trying to accomplish here, primarily focusing on the pedestrians, focusing on the events in the square, and really focusing on the park. It really does need a facelift. A lot of the items, as you saw in the photos and anyone that's out there on a regular basis, it certainly can be improved, and that's what we're looking to do. Let's get into the fun stuff of the budget and the schedule before I turn it over to Jaspreet. The budget. So the Transportation Improvement Plan, or what you commonly refer to as the TIP funding, the PennDOT funding is $2.1 million, and that is secured. There's a lot going on with funding, obviously, across the state, at a local level, at a state level, at a federal level, but that is on the 2021 TIP. It's money that's locked up. There was also turnback funding. The city took over a couple of streets, I believe it was Northampton Street, from PennDOT, and they received funding for that. That is $665,000. So the budget that we're working for or towards with this part of the project, the PennDOT project, is just over $2.7 million. That will be for the items I showed you with the two-way conversion and the square, center square. Schedule, preliminary engineering, we're looking to complete essentially now. We're basically wrapping that up as we're talking. Final design is going to go very quickly. We're going to look to get that wrapped up in early 2021. And then we're looking to get this out on the street for bids and get a contractor moving in the summer of next year. And then about a 1-year construction season we see. One of the points that Dave has hammered home to me very often is that we really need to coordinate the schedule with the community, with the events. So we don't have an exact schedule laid out, but as we get to that point and we're ready to bid this, we have flexibility when we bid this out to put certain restrictions to the contractor on when they can do certain work. But we're looking to get in and get out of there as quick as we can and get this work done.
Hey, Earl, I just want to add that another goal of ours is to minimize disturbance where we possibly can. This is obviously going to be an intrusive project for those that are going to have to endure it. And I just want everyone to know that we're going to put, every consideration into place that we can to reduce the impacts as much as possible.
Absolutely. So with that, I don't know if we're going to save all questions to the end or if we want to move on to the Center Square Park renovations real quick.
We can move on to the Center Square Park and we'll take questions at the end.
Perfect. Okay, I will turn it over to Jaspreet from our office, who will go through the next couple slides.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, so we will briefly discuss the proposed design for the park. This refurbishment of the Center Square is separate from the PennDOT renovations, as Earl mentioned, and is expected to be achieved by funds valued at approximately $850,000. The park at Center Square would receive a facelift along with the traffic renovations in terms of aesthetics, but also it would keep in mind the existing utilities, the electric vaults, and the mature trees. The renovations at the park include updating the design to a more modern, contemporary design, while also recognizing and respecting the history of Center Square. The proposed design includes updating walkways and pedestrian areas to accommodate farmers markets and other events. The design also expands the green space for the park while maintaining all of the mature trees, as mentioned before, which provides additional seating space. So if you all are able to see the site plan, we'll start at,
sorry, I moved ahead. Go ahead.
So we'll dive deep into the different elements. We'll start at number 1. This is the seating around the historic fountain, which will be updated with bluestone cladding and natural stone coping. Moving to number 2, the pedestrian space between the fountain and green space is proposed to be poured aggregate concrete scored with 18 by 18 inches squares in a deep gray color, providing an open casual space. At number 3, we have a bold gray brick that outlines the original Northampton County courthouse footprint that stood at Center Square from 1765 to 1861. The proposed design would include the Declaration of Independence etched into the brick to commemorate the historical event. The original courthouse was square in shape, but the proposed design chamfers at number 4 to accommodate the entryways that direct the user to and from the periphery of the park and to the fountain. The color scheme for these entryways are proposed to be medium gray brick with a prominent beige border. And then at number 2, that is at the periphery of the roundabout, it's also proposed to be poured aggregate concrete, scored to follow the pattern of the circle in a light gray tone. Other features located within the park include green mounds at number 5, providing additional seating through change in elevation, creating a perception of rolling hills, providing a sense of respite from the urban surrounding. Starting at the west quadrant at number 6, we have an arc of the relocated historic plaques that will be remounted into boulders, adding an additional touch of organic seating. Moving to the southern quadrant at number 7, the design includes an elevated stage for outdoor events, while also providing a seat wall. The proposed 18-inch high seat wall component is also replicated in the north quadrant, with diminishing curb heights at number 8. At the east quadrant, we have existing flagpoles at number 9, which will be refurbished. At number 10, the proposed design also looks at relocating existing memorials along an arched stepping stone pathway. At number 11, we have additional mounted seating across all the entryways. And in order to continue City of Easton's management of stormwater runoff and to meet the MS4 requirements, the proposed design anticipates locating rain gardens for mitigation efforts, shown at number 12. Number 13 is proposed to be, in order to create a cohesive design at the plazas, at the 4 quadrants around the center square. Similar hardscape materials are proposed. The poured aggregate concrete, followed by the bold gray brick border, and finally the medium gray brick that'll follow to the base of the downtown buildings. And we can move on to the next slide, Earl, please. Thank you. This following slide shows the section across Center Square, highlighting the different features that we discussed between the circumference of the proposed design. On this slide, we also see proposed hardscape materials that will modernize the existing square, as well as the different seating options. For example, the boulder with the historic plaques, the mounted seating, and the green mounds. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Earl.
All right, no, thank you very much. So that concludes the presentation portion. Thank you very much, Jaspreet, for going through that. It is truly 3 different components. We want to do all the work at one time. We don't want to have multiple contractors out here working in the same area and have this area under construction for a very long time. As Dave mentioned, we want to minimize that. So we're looking with the different funding sources, how we're going to combine this into one project. And that's why we wanted to present it to you that way today.
Earl, the capping on the fountain wall, you're going to do new clad rock on the sides instead of the brick to give it an updated look. The capping, is that going to be slate that's Northampton County sourced? It looks like slate. She said natural stone. What kind of stone is it? Is it slate? Or is it limestone?
I would have to have either Jaspreet or Jim answer that.
Yes.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm going to butt in real quick. Yes, sure. It's proposed to be natural stone, but of course, we would much rather prefer using localized materials, so we can use the slate that you proposed as well. Okay. Mayor.
Okay, at this time, I'll open up the council members for any comments or questions they may have. Councilman Vice Mayor Brown, if you want to have a question or a comment.
A comment, actually. It looks to be that it's going to be more interaction going on than it is right now, which really makes me happy. The crosswalks, to have them shortened Not only it makes it safer, but I'm sure Mr. Marley would be grateful for the shorter walk that he always talked about with timing of the lights. So it looks really good, the blueprint anyway.
Okay.
Thank you
Dr.
very much, sir.
Ruggles? Dr. Ruggles?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. Did you get any feedback? It appears as though the center circle has a lot of, I'll call it topography change. And I know that they set up a lot of tables there during the farmer's market. And my concern would be is there's a lot of mounds and things like that, that's not conducive to tables.
You're
Roger,
referring
one of
more-
the things we were trying to accomplish there was, you may have noticed that there's relatively no grass left in the circle. And what we would want to do is try and get the vendors set up on concrete versus taking over the grassy portions. Maybe we could reserve those for a less intense use, but, with the pounding it gets every Saturday, we've had to mulch probably, 50% or more of what used to be existing green space. So that was just intended to be a change in topo to provide seating and, even some fun for kids when they're in there.
Well, I mean, what I was referring to was they set up tables for people to sit at and, drink coffee or whatever within the circle currently. I mean, before COVID. And I mean, there were a few of those, and I'm just asking, as far as the topography is concerned, the renderings didn't look as though there was a lot of flat surface in that green area, and that's where they typically had the tables.
I think, as David said, one of the things we will require the farmer's market is to use the new 20-foot addition of poured structured concrete rather than the grassy areas for the vendors, because it just doesn't look as good as it used to be.
This is people that.
No, I know you're talking about the people the picnic tables that they set up, but there's gonna be an extra 20 feet wide, so you're gonna increase the circumference of the circle. They should be able to fit everything within there, and with all the plazas being reduced with pourable concrete again, I would think that we could put some of the vendors over there in the plazas, now that we're gonna have 4 plazas, not just 1.
Hey, Jaspreet, can you comment on Councilman Ruggles' observation about the level grass areas? Rolling hills aren't encompassing most of that, correct?
Correct. So in the west quadrant is where you would see the intense, if we were to do intense, but it would be like a soft rolling hill. But in the rest of the 3 quadrants, you see they're relatively flat. And additionally, we are providing other seating as well along all the entrance areas.
Yeah, I'm not sure if my pointer shows up, but there is seating all along each of the quadrants, and then also along elevated seating area, built-in seating.
Correct. So that seating is also replicated in the north quadrant. So you have that symmetry effect on the north and the south, and then there's additional seating as well. So there's enough room for tables, for chairs, for people to even relax on the grass. So I hope that answers your question.
I got
Dr. Ruggles.
I'm sorry, this is backing away from the circle, but something you had covered earlier. We were talking about the Ferry Street and 2nd Street intersection, and how that is going to have a stop sign at it. How does that work with the 2 driveways that are going to be right at that intersection? I mean, that it seemed.
You're talking right here.
Yes.
Right here, 2nd Street and Ferry. So they would also be stop controlled, and that was one of the concerns we had. If we just allowed this to be free flow, meaning people could come and make a left turn from Ferry onto 2nd, and make a right turn from 2nd onto Ferry, in front of the post office here, we had concerns that one, it would be difficult to see around that corner. And two, you do have those other driveways coming in, which you mentioned. So in order to control that, our proposal is to do an all-way stop. It'll also help with pedestrians. If anyone wants to cross at that intersection, it'll stop the vehicles there.
Earl, will there be a prohibition of tractor trailers going down Ferry Street except for local delivery?
That's something we can absolutely look at, yeah.
I can't see a tractor trailer necessarily wanting to avoid the circle going down Ferry Street and trying to make that loop onto Second, if they don't have to. If it's a local delivery like the post office, they're going to have to deal with it. But
right,
we keep non-local traffic out of that intersection would be helpful.
No, that's a great point. I'm going to write that down.
The other thing that I would like to point out at that intersection, I don't know if you've considered it or not, but currently there are parking spots along the post office itself where people going to the post office can get out and go in. If we make that a two-way, then those parking spots would only be available essentially to the people coming south on 2nd Street. And anybody that comes in the way they normally would this time from Ferry would be on the opposite side of a street where we may not have parking available for the post office.
Right, so if you wanted to park directly in front of the post office, you're 100% correct. You'd have to be coming in that direction to stop and park. But if you did come the other way and there was parking available, you would obviously then need to cross at the all-way stop intersection.
But my point is, I'm just asking, would it be recommended that we maybe reserve some parking spots on the opposite side of the street so people who are coming in?
Dr. Ruggles, you froze up again, but I understand what he's saying. And city council could automatically do that without this plan. They can put 15-minute pickup and drop off spots along where Project of Easton is and along where the bookstore is on the other side of the street, on the east side of 2nd and then south side of Ferry, if that be the case. And we have two more again on, it seems like we're doing a lot of 15-minute pickup spots throughout the city. And I think that's something that's going to have to be looked at eventually, but this would be a good spot for some of them.
No, you're exactly correct. The city has the authority to control the parking. So if that's something that we want to implement part of this project separate, council has that authority.
And Mayor, we could even sign it so that it was only in that condition for the hours of the post office, and then outside of it, just allow metered parking too.
That's an excellent point, David, because of all the restaurants there. You have 3 restaurants along Ferry Street that are very busy. So at night, there's no sense in making them 15-minute spots.
That's a great point.
Mayor, may I say something?
Sure, absolutely.
Mayor?
Where are you at? Who's this?
I just wanted to say, I don't know how this, Councilman O'Connell, I don't know how this would impact the potential design or anything, but I think the farmer's market is thinking about making Larry Holmes Drive a more permanent home. So I don't know how often they're going to be coming up to the circle.
Well, that's a good point.
I think I think they're
you're
just
absolutely
thinking about
right.
it. And
That decision hasn't been made. We tried to get them to move several years ago and they didn't want to. And now that they're down there because of COVID, there seems to be the farmers themselves like it down there better. However, the merchants in Center City don't like it because they're not seeing any reciprocal shopping that would take place on a normal Saturday, even in the public market, which is also GDP, as you know. So I would think, in my own personal opinion, as we talk about this is primarily a place where people can socialize. We're not making a circle wider, 20 feet wider, just for the farmers market. It's for everything that we do down. Everybody wants to have the events in the circle. That's just the way it is. I mean, Bacon Fest, Garlic Fest, Heritage Day, All of them want, concerts, everybody. It's like the amphitheater is a beautiful place to have a concert along the waterfront, but where most cities want to use the waterfront, our center square is such a public space that people want to use it. And I think, as I understand from being down there on most Saturday mornings, the farmers who are there who have stands really like it down there for a number of reasons. One, GEDP has garnered free parking at the Haver building, which allows people to walk to this market and walk back and forth to the car, not having to pay for parking. Secondly, the only people that it's not a social event, it's people there to shop and leave. Unlike what Dr. Ruggles was talking about with people sitting down, having a cup of coffee and staying for 2 or 3 hours. Like myself, I'm there for a half hour. I go down, I get what I need, and I go home. So I think you're absolutely right, David, but I don't think it, David, you may have a difference of opinion, but I think this is done for upgrading, safety concerns, getting rid of trip hazards, and just making this circle a more of a park like that it is than just a traffic rotary.
Hey, Councilman O'Connell, one of the things that we wanted to make sure of was, because we knew there was some uncertainty and, during construction, the market will need to remain where it is on the waterfront. But that decision could change in a couple of years. And we just wanted to be prepared if it should, that it could. And so the mountable curb and the additional space would actually be where they would pull off, drop their equipment, and then, pull back off, and then they could set up. And that way, it's kind of even a better situation because they're not actually taking up a travel lane at that point. They've pulled completely off, which I think is an added safety measure. But in either way, our final product, its goal is to accommodate it, whether it goes there or not, and the space is usable by everybody.
Okay. Thank you, David. Mayor, I have one more question.
Go ahead, Councilman O'Connell.
How badly impacted do you think businesses on the circle will be during construction?
Well, it's tough to say how it's going to be phased. Probably not a whole lot from any of the inner park work. We would need to figure out the phasing of traffic, and that's something we haven't gotten to yet because obviously we wanted to get more public input before we proceed with final design. But yeah. Earl, I would assume that there might be an option to maintain traffic through the circle for most of the project. Our goal is always, like it was in 2012, is to lessen the impact to the businesses. I can't sit here and say that there's not going to be disruption and noise, but we just need to think through how we phase the work and give alternative means. One thing off the top of my head is it would make sense to do the two-way conversions to give people way more options to get around any disruptions there.
Yeah, and one of the great advantages we have here is that the travel lanes are so wide. So typically when we have to do road work, we have a 12-foot lane and a 2 or 3 foot shoulder, and we're trying to shift vehicles around. It's very hard to set up. Because we have 20-foot travel lanes, we'll be able to maintain traffic through this project almost the entire time, except for when we have to physically remove the crosswalks. And even then we can do that in sections. So as Dave mentioned, we haven't figured out the final traffic control, but we've definitely thought about it, and we think we can maintain traffic as a single lane for the majority of the project.
That's good.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council members have a comment or concern? Seeing none, I'll move it over, open to public hearing.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, Councilman Volcano.
My question is, you're going to be making the other 3 quadrants like the Crayola. How many parking spaces are we going to lose?
Currently now there's 10 in each. That would go down to 8. But another thing to keep in mind though is that each of the quadrants currently has a 15-minute meter, which they do get used, but anyone who wants to stay longer than that, it doesn't really do them any good. So I think providing the 32 spots, I don't think it's going to be noticeable over time.
And I think David brings up a good point. speaking like we were of the post office, those 15-minute spots become useless after 5 o'clock because the retailers are closing. Where you would run in, pick up, like if you went to Chow Sandwich or Josie's or something, that's where your 15-minute spots are. And so what happens is they lay fallow during the evenings because people can't park there because they're going to go for dinner. They may be an hour and a half or 2 hours. So we need to be able to, with our new smart meters, let them be longer after 5, 6, or whatever time we do that. But that certainly will only create 2 spaces less per quadrant.
You know, if we are fortunate enough to have enough funding to do that, you know, we always look at cost benefit and you know, does the project, you know, outweigh the, you know, what could be a slight inconvenience of going from 10 to 8. And in this case, you know, I think our collective thought was, you know, having that much plaza space, given our recent experience with, you know, having the restaurants out there and a more vibrant, I think it just gives more opportunity, and we still have adequate parking. Space is a premium, especially when it can be used for, you know, outdoor dining and other activities, including the market that can expand into the quadrants. So we thought about the benefits and the costs, and I think the benefits outweigh it there.
It's a good question, though, Councilman Volcano. Any other council members before I open it up to the public? Okay, opening it up to the public. If you want to address anything of the circle, questions, comments, concerns, please use the button at the bottom of your screen that allows you to raise your hand. And when you raise your hand, we'll bring you into the chambers to be able to ask your question or make your comments. I see 10 people are in attendees. Any comments? Please raise your hand. Okay, I see no hands being raised. Louis, to you?
No, none, Mayor.
No, so we will move on. Earl, do you need any closing comments?
No, just real quick. This is just a great project for us. I mean, we do a lot of projects to widen roads and do a variety of different projects, and it's really exciting to be a part of this. That's really it.
Well, we thank Pannoni. You've always been good for the city and our public projects. And Earl, I appreciate your comments. And Dave Hopkins for your ability to represent the city so well. I think this project's an excellent project. It does not violate my 11th commandment because it really doesn't create the ring road that was created back in 1970. So I'm happy. I want to make sure. I just remember that project where you couldn't go into the circle and it was just a mess. But I think one of the things I like the most is expanding the ring road to 2 ways. I think that really helps the project a lot, helps the downtown circulation pattern, and helps the businesses. You know, as a retailer for 28 years, PennDOT constantly was talking about possibly making Cattell Street one way and McCartney Street the other way. And retailing, if you're a business, you want cars to pass your business, and you're going to reduce it by 50% automatically. So I think that'll help our downtown merchants, especially the ones that are on the ring road. Now they'll be seen. So thank you, Earl, and
Jess Breed.
Jess Breed. Jess Breed was on it. I was trying to remember which one of your people were on, and my phone's going crazy.
Phone's ringing.
Phone's crazy. So thank you, Jess Breed and Earl, and all the other people who worked with it on Pannoni's behalf.
Great. Thank you very much.
Will you have to take it through PennDOT for final approval once we have our comments?
Yes, and PennDOT's been great to work with. They recognize that these are city streets; these are not state roads. They remind me of that often, so they have deferred a lot of the items to the city.
Good, thank you, Dave. Any closing comments?
No, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I'll close that public comment hearing. The hearing on the traffic pattern in downtown Easton and the park project for the circle. We'll now open the for public comment on agenda items only. There will be a time at the end of the meeting for public comment on any item related to the city of Easton. Again, you just use your raise your hand button at the bottom of the screen in the middle, and we will recognize you. You'll have to give your name and address, please. I still see no hands up. Not any hand, no hands. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda, Mr. Clerk and Madam Clerk.
Okay, under the consent agenda, we have Bill 28, introduced by Mr. Milan, which would
remove a 15-minute parking pickup in front of 319 Cattell and create a 15-minute parking pickup in front of 323 Cattell. We had bill number 29 that was introduced by Mayor Panto, which would amend a section in chapter 435 of the property maintenance and housing standards, which would give an exception of when a key box is needed at a property. We also have bill number 30 that was introduced by Mayor Panto, which would amend the sections in chapter 135, the records of the public of the code of the city of Easton. And that was just pretty much changing the person's name who was going to be the right to know officer. And we have bill number 31 that was introduced by Ken Brown, which would amend the 2020 City Hall Fund budget. We also have a resolution that would approve the certificate of appropriateness for 41 Southwest Street.
So moved.
So moved by
Agenda.
Volcano, seconded by O'Connell. Discussion on the consent agenda. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger,
Aye.
Mr. Milan,
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles. Dr. Ruggles,
He's off the screen for some reason. He was having problems freezing up. He might be trying to get back in.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
Mayor Panto.
Aye. There are no reports to be received by council, so I'll move on to committee reports. Finance Committee, Vice Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one thing to report on. The Finance Committee met yesterday and we went over, Mr. Lizicki took us through the 2019 aggregate study and the audit study for 2020 year to date, and the S&P rating, which we was able to keep an A rating, which says something very good for the city, that we, even through this pandemic, we was able to be fiscally smart with our monies and smart in how we run the city. So that is my report for this evening.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Brown? Mrs. Volcano, the Economic Development Committee?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say the Hearst Building is coming along quite nicely. I was in Antonio's restaurant today, which is basically next door, and he said he's anxiously awaiting the business to come.
Yeah, they are.
We are very happy for them still pursuing it.
Planning and Code Committee, Councilman O'Connell?
I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Dr. Ruggles, is he back yet? Nope. Public Works Committee, Mr. Ettinger?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a report tonight. I will, however, be introducing a resolution involving a letter of intent between New England Hydropower Company and the city of Easton.
Very good. And I also want to thank you, Jim, for your making the connection with the contact Kevin Lewis at the Carpenters Union, who will be helping us out as much as they can with putting together the sheds for the winter market. Thank you. Administration Committee, Councilman Milan.
I have no report.
Report of City Solicitor, Mr. Shear.
I have no report.
And report of the mayor, I'll just report that the 185 South 3rd Street, Mr. Shear is working on a agreement of sale with the developer. Once that agreement of sale is done, I will definitely call a meeting of the 185 Community Committee to have them updated on the status of that project. Since obviously COVID stalled that project for 5 or 6 months this year. And we'll bring them back together to have an update from the developer. And also I want to remind everybody, Trick or Treat is this Saturday night in Easton. We will have it for those that want to participate. Those that don't will not put on their porch light, so that little children know not to go to that porch. We're asking people to possibly even wear gloves and definitely a mask when they're giving out the candy. And we're asking parents to have a mask on their children underneath their Halloween mask. So we want everybody to be safe, stay distantly apart, social distantly apart when they're, and one of the reasons why I decided to have it like many other communities, when I was a kid, man, you went trick-or-treating the whole neighborhood and there were hundreds of kids out there. Today, even in my neighborhood, in the 30 years I lived on Charles Street, we don't see as many children as we used to. We used to see a lot, but the kids have grown up, and we're cutting it down to from 6 to 8 instead of 5 to 8, so that it's a shorter period of time, and there's 90% of the communities are having it on the actual date, so that you don't have people going from Phillipsburg, Palmer, all over the area in their cars, unloading carloads of kids. So that's this Saturday. And I'll just give you a very quick update on the winter market. Dave Hopkins and John Kingsley are doing a really good job working with GDP to get this off the ground. I will again reiterate what I reiterated last night for the public meeting. There's rumors going around, how can the mayor be recommending furloughs of employees and spending money on ice rinks and everything else? That is not the same pot of money. That is COVID-related money. We're looking for grants and other types of monies that will come from there, including money from the Moose account, which is raised by sponsors, just like the D. Rossioli concert 3 or 4 weeks ago. We had 4 sponsors, Dieter Brothers, R Squared, Christopher Wolf and Miller, and Brown Dodd Family Dealers, a partnership of dealers. So we try to find money elsewhere. We try not to touch the 101 account for anything like that. So moving on, correspondence. There's no correspondence, no unfinished business. Moving right into new business, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Okay, under new business, we have a resolution being introduced by Mr. Ettinger, which would approve a letter of intent between the City of Easton and New England Hydro Power Company, LLC, which would develop a low impact hydroelectric power facilities on property that is owned and operated by the City of Easton.
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second? Oh, I'm sorry, it's only introduced. Yeah, it's a bill. All right. No, it's a resolution.
No, that's a resolution, Mayor.
Is there a second?
Mr. Brown seconded it. We need to just take a vote.
Okay. Roll call. I'm sorry, any discussion? I will say that some of you may have been at the demonstration. I know that Dr. Rumpels isn't on, but he and I were there. This is going to be a really interesting project. Using our water to turn into power and sell it to the electric company. I'm really excited about this. As a green project for the city, and it comes along with a number of other green projects that we're involved in. So roll call.
Okay. Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
And Dr. Ruggers is not on, correct?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, well, at this point of our meeting, we're at public comment on any matter concerning the City of Easton. If you'd like to raise your hand, the button is at the bottom of your screen. It says raise hand, and you can raise your hand and I will call on you, and Mr. Campos will let you into the gallery, and you state your name and address, and we'll address your comments or concerns or questions. I still see none. No hands being raised. Mr. Campos, do you see any hands being raised?
No, Mayor.
Before I close the meeting, Mr. Campos, is there anything you'd like to report?
No, Mayor. Well, one thing, we made a comment last night on our platoon strength is going to increase to 14 per platoon in the fire department. And also tomorrow there's a Pennsylvania Municipal League conference. Myself and Mark Lesnicki, along with Ryan Hottenstein, our financial advisor, and Jeff Mills from Cozen O'Connor will be giving a presentation on our finances as a case study with the scoop and toss, et cetera, on how we use those monies to not only cut the deficit, but put money back into the general fund for next year and the year after.
Good point. I forgot to mention that. I'm really proud of you guys. I know you did that. You did a presentation a couple months ago with PML, and this one will be seen by a lot of people across the state. And at our board of directors meeting, we're going to be talking about our scoop and toss, so or scoop and throw, whatever you want to call it. And we also reported last night that Mark is on the call at our aggregated pension board meeting, which was again virtual. this past week we did, or last week, we did get a report from Morgan Stanley. And I want to say that the pension plans have done much better. The city managed pension plans have done much better since we switched. I guess it's now almost 13 years ago. We switched in the end of 2008 to beginning of 2009 to UBS. They did a great job for us. We said then that we were going to put it out to bid every 5 years. It went to maybe 8 or 9. We put it out to bid, and Morgan Stanley, not bid, I shouldn't say bid. We put it out for references and requests for proposals. Morgan Stanley was awarded the portfolio. They are located right here in downtown Easton, and the two Mikes, Mike Globus and Mike, I forget Mike's other last name. They're doing a great job, and we saw obviously the market is doing well. We're heavily invested in the technology field, and that's what's going up. Your Amazons, your Zooms, your Microsoft, and those are going up really well. So I'm really excited about the fact that our portfolio is doing much better. Unfortunately, not good enough. We saw the report last night that shows most of our city managed pension funds are well below the 70% threshold. And but we're working. When we took office in 2008, we were putting roughly $400,000 or $500,000 a year towards our municipal obligation. And this next year for 21, it goes up another $1 million, and we'll be at the $6 million threshold. So that's a lot of legacy costs, but it is getting the city on a better financial footing. So we have a couple more public meetings and public budget hearings coming up for the general fund and all the other funds, capital fund, healthcare, insurance, sewer, parking, all those funds that we have. For a proposal, remember, our meeting is on November the 10th because the November 11th is Veterans Day. We'll be meeting on the 10th as a stated session first, and then right after that, we'll go into a budget session. And then our following budget session is 2 weeks later. And then budget approval is scheduled for December 9th. If need be, we have another week. We can go till December 15th, according to the charter. So is there any other questions, comments, or concerns from City Council before we adjourn the meeting? I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. And no one wants to adjourn the meeting. We're all having a good time.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
O'Connell and Volcano. Thank you very much. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
Mayor Panto,
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Welcome back, Tom.
He said, all right. Mr. Ettinger,
Aye.
Mr. Milan.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you all. Have a good week. Stay safe.
Good night.
Night.
Aye.
You too. See you all later.